Who is?
Apparently there's a stomach bug going around.
Oh.
Not my kid, thank God.
I know. Ruby was up throwing up all night Wednesday. Hi everyone.
Hi.
I'm Taluka from Markers and Minions.
I'm Jenna. I'm an ESE teacher, and my 2 sons go to school with her children.
Yeah, with my 2 daughters. We were just talking about a stomach bug going around.
Better now than before.
Rubes was sick all night Wednesday, but then we had a tropical storm or hurricane, I guess it was, on Thursday, so we didn't have school anyway, so it kind of worked out. All right, so let's start off a little slowly, I guess, while people join us. But last week we went live to talk about Unit 4, and we created this awesome unit introduction anchor chart together. And so if you want to go back and watch that replay, that's on my YouTube channel, and then it's also archived in the videos section in this group, so you can go back and rewatch that to get some ideas for when you're ready to introduce Unit 4. I guess some housekeeping before we begin. I wanted to update everybody on the weekly focus flyers. These things, if you have been in our group for a couple months now, you will have seen a picture of that posted. I started creating these and I was asking for feedback on like what to call them and what to include, but they're flyers that you can send home each week that have the spelling words, the grammar, vocabulary, the focuses for each everything for every week. Sorry, brain fart. We're starting off slow, okay? I was meal prepping all day today on my feet. I cooked like 5 dinners today, so slow start. But yeah, it's like spelling, grammar, vocab, writing, and reading comprehension for each week, and then it has the essential question up at the top. So I've finished these for grades 2 through 5 so far. First grade should be done like probably end of day tomorrow, and they're for all editions: California, National, Florida, 2021/2022. And they're editable, so you can go in if you're like, I don't like the vocabulary words, or I need to change them or add to them, or same with spelling, whatever. All of this is editable. It's a PowerPoint file. Okay, so that's an update on the weekly focus flyers. Okay, what else?
Last week, like she mentioned, we created this poster, and we talked a lot about Unit 4, perspective, point of view. So a lot of people were just asking what that might look like in their classroom. So we decided to come on and do a live, kind of do a demo lesson, go through a little bit what this might look like in your classroom. It's not geared to a certain grade.
Right. Yeah, I mean, we're going to go over, we're going to use Fractured Fairy Tales, because every year I always see teachers posting about these awesome Fractured Fairy Tale books and how they're super fun and silly, and they go really great with Unit 4. So we figured we would focus on one of them tonight and show you how you can incorporate them regardless of the grade that you teach, because the concept is point of view, right? Basically, more or less, across all the grade levels, which we talked about in last week's video. So you just modify, you're focusing on point of view and how, narrator helps illustrate a character's point of view and how that's different than another point of view you might have been exposed to before. So yeah, you just modify based on your grade level. All right, so I created companion pages for a lot of these books. Tonight we're going to focus on this one, and the companion pages that we show you, that we go through, are all free on my TPT shop as a unit that you can download. I'll go ahead and link that afterwards. We'll link it in the comments so that you can download it and try it out with your kids. All right, so we'll start by reading it. We've got this chart over here next to Jenna. We're not going to fill it out after we read, because for the sake of time, but when you're doing this with your students after you read aloud, what you would then do is fill out that chart as like a retelling, okay? Recall. But right now we'll just kind of fill it out as we go to keep this a little shorter, okay? So the book is called Honestly, Red Riding Hood Was Rotten.
Chomp chomp. Oh, I'm sorry. I was just finishing my lunch. My name's Wolf. Big Bad Wolf. You may have heard the story of Little Red Riding Hood. About a girl and her granny? Seems everyone has. My tale is different. Did I say tale? I meant tale.
Once upon a time, I ran out of food. Completely. The cupboards were bare, the freezer too, and I'd eaten every last vegetable and fruit in the garden. Every one. Other wolves might have lunched on little forest critters, chipmunks, bunnies, squirrels, but I'm a vegetarian. That's right, I don't eat meat. Well, I try not to. I love apples, Honeycrisp, Pink Lady, Golden Delicious, any kind really, but sadly, it was a long time until the next apple harvest. I hadn't eaten in weeks. My stomach growled and howled. It moaned and groaned. It even roared. Then my nose took over. Sniff, sniff, I took a whiff. What was it? A girl. Sniff, sniff, I took a whiff. What was it? Cake? Butter? In this forest? I had to investigate. So far we know this about the wolf. He has run out of food completely. He is a vegetarian, and he even says, I try not to eat meat, or I don't eat meat. But we know that he does eat apples, and he loves apples, but he has a problem. The problem is that he's eaten all of his food, and it's a long time until apple harvest. So it's been weeks, and he's basically starving. So she's just going to fill it out as we go, but like I said, after you do your read aloud, you'll ask your kids, like, okay, what was his problem? What motivated him to do what he did? And then you'll have them turn and talk as a group, and then share out responses, and you can bullet point their responses there, okay? So this isn't really like an answer key. It's kind of just what your students tell you, but we wanted to fill it out so that you can get an idea. So we wrote starving because he hadn't eaten in weeks. That's his problem and his motivation. And it connects to motives when we talked about last week, like what motivates a person to behave the way that they do, act the way they do.
And there she was, Little Red Riding Hood. She looked as plump and juicy as a big, sweet apple. Little Red waved her cape. Isn't it pretty, she said. Yeah, I said. Aren't I pretty, she said. Was she admiring herself in that puddle? So in the story, he keeps bringing it back to the fact that she looks like an apple. And I noticed that the illustrations even show her, like she's drawn, it reminds me of Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, but she's drawn to look like an apple. So that definitely is something that you'd want to point out to your students, especially they'll probably, I would say in the upper grades or maybe even lower grades notice, but if they don't, I would definitely make that connection.
And just kind of show that it's on his mind, about this whole story. She looks like an apple. He keeps thinking about apples because he's so starving. With this cape, she said, I'm even prettier than usual. Boy, someone was sure full of herself. My stomach growled.
Little Red twirled a strand of hair. Mother says the cape looks grand with my skin. My skin shines like pearls. Or the meat of a ripe apple, I thought, licking my chops. Remember, I haven't eaten in weeks. Time to chomp. So again, he's bringing it back to that she's looking like an apple.
But then Little Red said, I can't wait until Granny sees how pretty I am today. I'm bringing her cake and butter from my mother. My stomach howled. 2 meals, I thought. Granny for breakfast and Little Red for lunch, and then cake and butter for dessert? Where does Granny live? I asked. Little Red pointed. Down there, in the clearing, the brown house. I knew that house, and I had a plan.
Let's play a game, I said. Little Red smiled. I'm awesome at games. I bet you are, I said. You take this path, I'll take that path, and let's see who arrives at Granny's first. I will, she said. I'm the prettiest and the fastest. I bet you are, I said. So one of his motivations or his actions are he's challenging her. He wants her to get there and see who gets there first.
challenges Little Red to race to Granny's. That's the first action. My stomach moaned. Before it groaned, I ran. No one knows the forest like I do. I chose the shorter path. There you go.
Sniff, sniff, I took a whiff. What was it? Apple air freshener? Tap, tap, I knocked on the door. Who's there? Called out a voice. Your granddaughter, I squeaked. I brought you cake and butter from Mother. Doors open, Granny said.
Granny tugged at her nightcap. Green, she said. Isn't it pretty? Pretty like a Granny Smith apple, I thought. Aren't I pretty? Granny said. You must have heard the saying, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. Well, it's true.
My stomach roared. What's that noise? Granny asked. Chomp, chomp. I had to eat her. She was no Macintosh apple, but not too bad. I still felt hungry. So that's definitely an action. You just ate the Granny. She's gone.
Tap, tap. Little Red knocked on the door. Who's there? I called out, crawling into Granny's bed. Your granddaughter, Little Red said. I've brought you cake and butter from Mother. Doors open, I said. Little Red walked in and caught a glimpse of herself in the mirror. Isn't my cape pretty, Granny? She said. Aren't I pretty? I clenched my teeth.
Granny, Little Red said. What deep, dark eyes I have. Mm-hmm. I said, the color of apple seeds. Granny, she said, what perfect ears I have. Mm-hmm. I said, shaped like sharply cut apple slices. Granny, she said, what pretty red lips I have. Mm-hmm. I said, red delicious. Granny, she said, what lovely skin I have.
Chomp, chomp. I ate her up. What can I say? Things look different when you're hungry. She was no Fuji or Crispin apple. In fact, to be honest, she was a bit rotten. But she was better than nothing. Plus, I got dessert. Alright, so in the end, he finally eats Little Red, and that's our final action here. And then this last part here, Wolf's perspective, just to tie it in all the way with the Unit 4 theme of point of view and perspective. The wolf basically, and again, you have your kids arrive at these answers, these responses, but he basically is justifying it. He's saying he had to do it. He says on the very last page, she was better than nothing because he was starving. He didn't have anything to eat. And the last bullet point that I wrote was his hunger was more important than being a vegetarian. All right, so those are our 3 bullet points for the wolf's perspective. So this chart is just kind of a great way to retell. Since you're doing a read aloud with the students, they're not all like getting their own copy and close reading and analyzing it themselves. It's just a great way to have them digest it and then make that connection to what we just learned about with our previous chart, which was introducing the whole idea and concept. And then again, I have these side by side so that you can say, like, look, we talked about motives, and it's why a person has a specific point of view, and how that point of view motivates people to do things, to act, or you can say characters. And you can say, you know, the wolf's motivation was he was so hungry, and what did he do because he was hungry? He challenges Little Red, he eats Granny, and he eats her. Okay? So then you can make that connection there. And then also, I came up with these handouts. We printed out 2 of them, we enlarged them, and this is what I'm talking about is a free download on my TPT. But I made basically graphic organizers that you can use for the story as either whole class lessons or independent extra practice or whatever. But the skills that we have are analyze characters, this one. We have narrator's point of view, which is the second one we printed out. So this is all going to be real similar. Like if the students just did that big chart with you, they can definitely do this independently or in groups rather. And then we have summarized key events. So this is something we're doing pretty much across grade levels, right? So we're talking about what the key events are in the story and summarizing, beginning, middle, end. And then I threw in a non-literal language because in all of these stories, there's a lot of non-literal language. There's going to be similes and idioms and things like that. So this one's definitely like, I would say like second and up, but that's in there as well for you. And then word study, I wanted to incorporate this so that we could look at like the author's craft and see the way that the author writes and kind of analyze that. And then they're given a task. Let's see if we can see this. Mm-hmm. So they have to circle certain words in certain colors. So like, for example, circle 5 words with the long I vowel sound, circle an adjective that describes the wolf, and they're using different colors for these. And then also like, what does the word vegetarian mean? What context clues are here? So it's analyzing a little part of the read aloud for spelling, grammar, and vocabulary and language. And then we have a vocabulary page. So I picked 6 words from each book, each story, and then the students have to write the part of speech. It has the definition and the line from the story where it's used, and then they have to fill in the blanks. And then I wrote an assessment, and the big issue is always with assessments is that the kids are bombing them, right? So they need more practice, more exposure. I wrote the test questions very similarly to the way that the test questions are written on the benchmark tests. So they're very formally written. They are assessing what each of these pages has students practicing. So it connects right back to the pack. And then there are answer keys for every single page. Okay? So there's 6 activities altogether, plus you could do that main chart that we did as a follow-up. And then I have that as a freebie for Red Riding Hood, and then I also made them for Hansel and Gretel. Trust me, Hansel and Gretel are sweet. No lie, pigs and their houses can fly. Seriously, Snow White was so forgetful. Believe me, I never felt a pee. Seriously, Cinderella is so annoying. Really, Rapunzel needed a haircut. And trust me, Jack's Beanstalk stinks. Alright, so these are fun. I also have these linked on my Amazon. These are like, I feel like they were like $6 to get on Amazon. Not bad. To add to the library.
So we thought, obviously you do this whole group together the first time, the chart, and then maybe have your students break into groups. Maybe each of them each group would get a book, and then they could kind of redo the same exact concept, but in a smaller group setting, so you could kind of get some informal data of how they're doing, kind of see ahead of time, are they understanding this concept? Do they need a little bit more practice with this? Mm-hmm. So it kind of just gives you like that informal before. Yeah. A lot of people are saying their students are not doing well on these assessments, so we want to try to help to plug in some of that.
Yeah,
a little bit.
And then can you go to the big chart? What I would do probably immediately following this unit, after finishing Little Red and going through the routine with them, I would then do a read aloud of the next one, and then I would prep this. So instead I would put the graphic for whichever next story I'm reading in the middle and the title, and then I would put those 3 headers: problem, motivation, actions, and perspective. And I would make that like 4 or 5 copies of it, and then give it to my small groups and have them work on that as a center together, so that they have to go in and then add the bullet points using what they remember from the next read aloud. So that's great to have them working on while you're doing your benchmark guided reading with your small group. Yeah.
So I think you mentioned there's the link with the Amazon. So there's Amazon links. You can just go on there, and all these books are linked there. We will be back in 2 weeks on the 27th, right after Thanksgiving.
I might still be in Tennessee, actually.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll have extra stretchy pants, and we'll be back. in December. That'll be December.
Might be December, yeah.
Dude,
I might be like, please, can we go live? I need a break. We'll see. So let us know what you thought, and if you think you're going to incorporate any of these fractured fairy tales, and if there's anything else we can do to support you and give you some fun ideas for these things. And we'll be back in December, probably have a wonderful fall break, Thanksgiving break, and we'll see you then, huh?
Yeah. Bye. Thanks for joining us.
Cool beans.